Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of The Growth Show. And I am delighted to be joined by one of the most devilishly good-looking, handsome human beings on the planet. Not me, I know what you're thinking of, but the legend that is Tommy Evans. Tommy, thank you ever so much for coming on. How are you, my man?
Ollie, it's a pleasure to be on, and may I just say that has a lovely colour on you.
Thank you. I mean, it almost blends in with my skin tone, doesn't it? I mean, I clearly haven't been briefed on what I should and shouldn't wear for the podcast. But there we go.
Well, I like it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. All right?
Yeah, I was delighted that my wife lent it to me. Actually, I was pleased that she was so generous today. So, but you, however, in contrast, looking so fabulously bronzed. And
yeah,
I mean, did you groom that beard especially for this conversation?
I mean, it's taken a while. I'm not going to lie. The growth doesn't come overnight for me, but yeah, and I'm capitalizing on this beautiful weather we're having. So
and also with you, you're the fact that no barbers are open, hairdressers are open. You still look great with the hair, whereas mine looks like a badger's nest gone wrong. So, and the fact you're not even denying it is, absolutely crippling.
Yeah, I was going to join this thing going around, this shaving head, and I just thought, no, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm just going to let it just ride out.
Let it grow out.
Yeah,
you take it back to like the 70s. Just going to get the mullet and all that.
Yeah, I was thinking of just leaving a little tash, but I thought that might be taking it too far.
Ooh,
so
suits you.
Maybe something to work too, but yeah, I'm kind of liking it. Usually, I've always been a short sort of back and sides type guy, but I just thought, yeah, just let it.
No, you're just rolling with it. You just don't care.
Why not? Yeah.
Why not? Well, look, mate, the Growth Show and the people that listen to the Growth Show are all about people, their careers, development, and how they manage different scenarios. And yours is definitely a fascinating, interesting career, my man. And I thought I would just actually ask you about like early life, just to kick it off, because you've got a cracking like upbringing and coming over to the UK. So for the listeners that don't know anything about Tommy Evans, give them a sort of a little bit of a brief insight to his early days.
So yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. So mum's South African, was sort of born and raised in Durban, and dad is English, from the north, just outside Manchester, Warrington, and both sets of grandparents were Scottish. So that's obviously where the affiliation with Scotland came from an early age. But I was born in Zimbabwe, and then home for me is Portugal. That's where, when I was 2 years old, we moved, and mum and dad have been ever since. So really had the good fortune of growing up in amazing weather, and with my brother Max, just the two of us. So always had the chance to be outside, like climbing trees, was always massively into our sports. And that's where, my kind of passion for sports really came. The school out in Portugal that we were at didn't really facilitate rugby. It didn't really facilitate many sports. We just had this kind of dirt track. So it was only when I was like 9 years old and got the chance to go to boarding school in England that rugby kind of first came into my life, and I never looked back, really.
And man, was that always something that you wanted to pursue? Because I mean, being brought up in South Africa, or starting in Africa, I can't imagine that rugby was hugely on the priority. You probably didn't know what it was when you were sort of 2 or 3, and then moving to Portugal. Last time I checked, they weren't high up on the rankings. So, was it just sort of you stumbled upon it from coming? Didn't you go to Windlesham and then Wellington College or something like that? Did you sort of found it all or not?
Well, yeah, actually, golf was my first passion. Obviously, my old man's a golf professional. He has been his whole life. And all I knew was I liked golf, and I was fast because mum was a sprinter, and kind of grew up just like, playing tag. Like I said, we had a dirt track at the school in Portugal. Used to play British Bulldogs. So I always knew I was quite fast compared to other kids. And then got the chance to go to boarding school, and it was Windlesham House School, which isn't that well known as a rugby school. And mum and dad actually sent me there because I was they thought I would be more into the acting side of things. I had a really good sort of like arts and like dance school. And they thought I'd be quite theatrical. I was obsessed with Elvis Presley, so that probably had something to do with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right. And I've done Matthew McConaughey so much recently. I'm just like, it just comes out even when
You're basically him. I mean, that's who you are, isn't it? I mean, that's exactly who you are. So, mate, so when you were growing up, because your parents, obviously your dad, awesome sportsman in his own right. Mum sounds though she was, too. Did that sort of drive you towards wanting to pursue a career in some form of professional sport, even if you weren't sure what it was, or were you just brought up? Because some people are brought up with like, I've got to do better than my parents. Others are just crack on and get on with it.
Yeah, I think like mum and dad never like kind of pushed me into it, but seeing them and having that at the forefront, it definitely sort of like sort of put it on my radar. But I honestly, I was more into singing and dancing, and I don't really know where that came from in the family. It was just something that was my main passion. Like I said, I was obsessed with Elvis. I used to love musicals, and I was always dancing and singing. And I think that's why they sent me to this particular school. And it was only when I got to the school and rugby was kind of like came my way. And I realized you could play the sport where you could just hit someone as hard as you wanted and run around them. And that was the game. I was just like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And that's when I really kind of never looked back.
I wasn't very thankful that you did that to me there, Tom. You realise that? It scarred me for life that you hit me hard and then ran around me.
I could say the same thing. I couldn't get anywhere near you. Just like steamed over me. Just like, see ya. Bump me off. Man. But then obviously you've had you were born in Africa, raised in Portugal for a large proportion of it, then came and lived in England for your schooling days, ended up sort of playing for Scotland, but throughout your adolescence played England 16s, England 18s, England under 21s. So first and foremost, where are your allegiances? If someone said like, what is Thom Evans? Are you Scottish? Are you English? Are you African? Or are you well this is the thing. I'd say I'm English because I was schooled in England, and like you said, I English passport. But I guess that where the Scotland side came from is that my grandparents were both sort of fanatical Scotland rugby supporters, and every Sunday, whether it be with either of them, I would always have it ingrained in me that I was there to support Scotland. And so even when I ended up playing England 16s, 21s, it was always like the Scotland heritage was always in the back of my mind. And it was actually playing against Scotland under 21s, and I had a pretty decent game. I scored a hat trick, and Sean Lanine, who was the Glasgow coach, was in the stands, and he was just like, "Look, we realise you're Scottish qualified, and we know you're at Wasps, and but we can offer you like a chance to play for like a full season of first team rugby with a view to potentially being involved in Scotland in the next 2 years." And at the time I was at Wasps, and they were incredible. They were winning the Heineken Cup, they were winning the league, and we had under the captaincy of Lawrence Dallaglio, but I only managed to play I think 6 first team games, and I was just desperate. As you know, like rugby, you never know when your career is going to be up, and I was never like a negative person in my way of thinking, but I just wanted to play with the best, and I wanted to play at the top of the game. And so that's when I decided to make the move. It was after that that season and move up to Glasgow.
And just on a small point, obviously that was a huge move, a huge sort of statement for you, if you like I guess uprooting from arguably one of the best clubs in the world at that point in time, Wasps, going up to Glasgow to play there to pursue a career with Scotland. But also, you said that naturally you felt like you were compelled into the more sort of theatrical side, music side, dance side of things, which is probably more of an individual's sport or talent, not always, but then in a team environment. Yeah. You were also embarking on but what, you had embarked on a career in that with a boy band or something like that, with 24/7 or something like that, wasn't it? Or something along those lines.
Yeah.
What was that? A difficult decision, because I mean, didn't you tour? So you went on tour for like the warm-up act for like McFly and
yeah.
else.
So I always saw myself as going professional with the rugby, but in my last year of school, my best friend Andy was an incredibly talented singer, and he basically got this record deal on the table, which was unheard of back then, and it was an independent label, but we had like at least a year's contract, and they were a 4-piece band, and one of the guys pulled out last minute, and he basically just said to me over, like, I think it was a Nando's in Kingston, he was like, look, we're auditioning for a new member, and I just know you're perfect for it, because you are the cheesiest person I know, and you've got an okay voice, and you're not a bad dancer. So, and I just kind of thought about it, and I was like, what's the worst that can really come of it?
Were you playing at the time? You were playing at Wasps or somewhere else? A contract?
I was at Wasps at the time, and the worst was I had like another year with the 21s, with the England 21s, and I'll never forget like calling up like Tosh Askew at the time. No, it was 19. Sorry, another year with 19s, and called up Tosh Askew, the coach at the time, and I was like, Tosh, I just gotta be honest, I'm not going to be available next season for selection. And he was just like, why? And I was just like, well, decided to give this boy band a go. And I remember it was just like deathly silence for a couple of minutes. I was like, Tosh, you there? You there?
Hello.
And I remember he was like, you being serious? And I was like, yeah. And that was it. So I just decided to give it a crack.
This is such a great point, because lots of people in their life, well, I mean, probably not going to be asked to be part of a boy band or anything else. Well, they might do, but have got big decisions to make in their life, and probably feel pressurized into doing a certain scenario, especially a young lad, like 18, 19 years of age, like professional rugby just in your fingertips and whatever else. And what was the thought process that went through your brain? Any young kid, if you like, listening to this now, who maybe has got aspirations to do something else but is worried about giving up a different opportunity, how did you play that out in your brain and be comfortable with the fact of like, okay, Tosh Askew here just sort of thinks I'm a total muppet. I might have just blown my chances with Wasps or whatever else, but I'm going to go and be in a boy band for you. Like, how did you play that out in your brain, or was it nothing like that?
Oh no, it was, and I had sleepless nights over the decision, right up to the point where I'd made the decision. I was, as I said, making that phone call to Tosh. I came off the phone call and I just felt, I felt a bit sick. So I was just like, what have I done? Because my whole life had been, going in one direction. But in answer to your question, it was really just I've never to this day wanted to ever regret not doing something. And like I said, this was my best mate basically giving me this chance of a lifetime to do something that, a lot of musicians work their whole life to try and get. And I was in a position to do it for a year and, then assess where we were. And I just thought, yes, it was gonna kind of get in the way of my plans that I'd made, for the last sort of 7 years. But at the end of the day, it was like I was young enough to come back from that if it didn't work out. And but it was tough because England won the World Cup that year in 2003, and rugby just like catapulted, around the country. It was anyway, and it was tough because like the band, we never took off, but I don't regret the decision at all. And I'd say to any youngster who's in that position is you got to just, I guess, follow your gut. And
what happened? I mean, just tell everyone what happened, because you did tour. I've got that you were the warm-up acts for Westlife, Pierre Andre, and McFly. I mean, I can see why you got the old mysterious girl, abs, that one. But I mean, that is a hell of a sort of list, if you like, for 1 year in the business. So what happened?
Yeah, it was. I mean, look, like I ticked off every box. We got a music video on MTV Hits, which back then was like the thing to do. We toured with one of the biggest bands around, Westlife at that time, and it was just like, you know, just being able to go up and down the country, just gigging with three of your best mates, like, and three of my best mates to this day. And what I loved about our experience is we never knew what we were going to get. You know, the tour was by far the biggest highlight, but we would be traveling around the country not knowing whether we were going to do this one performance to a man and his dog, and then the other to like about, you know, 2,000 people. It was bizarre, but it was the most, it was just the most amazing year I think I've ever had. It was brilliant.
And then, man, how did you, out of interest, when it didn't work out? I mean, I don't know what happened, but after a year, they sort of said, "Actually, Thom, you know, you're outselling Westlife. We can't keep you on anymore." Like, how did you manage that sort of disappointment as well? Because I mean,
yeah, I mean,
it must have been a big play.
I knew after the first kind of 6 months that it was never really going to take off. Like I said, we were like on an independent label, and I kind of just got this feeling that, you know, the people who were like managing us were just telling us one thing and then doing another. But, you know, so I'd kind of made my decision that I was going to come back to the rugby after the first couple of months. But, you know, I still stuck it out. And so it wasn't really that hard to take, you know, after that year. I was just, by the end of that year, I was just absolutely desperate to get back involved with the rugby and get that, you know, get my previous sort of ambition back on the road.
And man, what was the process of that? Like, just having, I mean, the way you talk, it's just so natural. It's like, oh yeah, well, I was playing in the 19s. I went off and toured with Westlife for a year. Knew after about 6 months it wasn't for me, so just came back and picked up a professional rugby contract. You know, like, I mean, it doesn't necessarily always play out like that. So what was your sort of process in your brain, or what were the action points that you kind of took around, like, you know, to make this happen?
Well, I said to myself, when I made this decision to join the band, I was like, well, whatever happens with the outcome of how successful we are, I'm going to keep just as fit as I would have done being a professional rugby player. And it was easy to do because you weren't getting bashed around. As we all know, it's hard to maintain, you know, like your physical prowess in mid-season because you're just always aching and have injuries and knocks that prevent you from doing so many things. So the great thing about being in a boy band is you can just like work on the rig, you know, do some stretching and keep very, very fit without having any aches and pains. And I wasn't able like to be well, that's a lie actually, because the other three guys were really enthusiastic about their rugby as well. And so we'd always be like chucking a ball around. Yeah, we weren't doing the drills and that you would be, you know, if you were in season as a professional rugby player. But by the year ended, I felt like I hadn't really lost anything. Yes, maybe the understanding for the game, but when I came back and played when I contacted Wasps, and it was funny because Alan Powell, who was the guy who was going to sign me from school, initially I called him up and I was like, look, I'm leaving leaving the band. I was like, I don't suppose you're looking for any wingers. And it just, you know, big believer in everything happens for a reason. They trialed a few wingers out at the Middlesex Sevens and they hadn't really had any success. And they were like, well, we've yet to...
I remember that tournament. I was playing that. You turned up and tore up. You scored like 7, didn't you, or something? And it was 8 or something. They're absolutely ripping out. Just give it to Tom Evans who just run rings on everyone. Well,
but it's just the right play, you know. And I, you know, as yourself, I've always loved 7s more than 15s, and that's a big statement to make, I know. But you know, I think you of all people would testify to just the space and the freedom it gives you to move. And for me, you know, it's always been one of the reasons why I play rugby is that ability just to run with ball in hand and you know, play that open, expansive game.
And then, so you came back, Was took it on, and then you thought, okay, actually, I'm going to head up north and join Glasgow to pursue, obviously, a career with Scotland, which worked out. So, you know, what was it like? You know, that feeling. I mean, I'm putting words into your mouth here, so I probably want you to tell me more. But like, was playing international rugby, you know, as a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, Thom Evans's end goal? Like, was that the dream? Was that the Or was it to be Elvis Presley? I mean, I don't know.
No,
you did both, but
I mean, to be perfectly honest, it was always to play international rugby, whether that be for England or Scotland. I didn't really have a preference, if I'm totally honest, at any stage in my life. But I have to say that the Scotland direction was really fueled by, you know, my grandparents and always having had that ingrained in me from an early age. So when I did decide to move up to Scotland, it did actually for me feel like the right move, you know, just both mentally and everything that came with. It was just when I got up to Scotland, it felt like I was home, you know, in some ways. And, you know, I was really welcomed up there and just never looked back.
And then, mate, standing there, where was your first cap? Where was it? At Murrayfield? Was it away or was it home?
No, my first cap was Argentina, which was unbelievable. I mean, we lost the game and I got pretty beat up, but it was just unbelievable experience. Buenos Aires.
At Murrayfield or down in Buenos Aires?
Yeah, Buenos Aires. Yeah, wow. Yeah. But then first, I think for me, the biggest pinch myself moment was when I played with Max, first starting game for Six Nations, and it was Stade de Paris in Paris against France, and it was just like, you know, I mean, you know that stadium, how
and doing it with your brother, special, no? I mean,
yeah, because I never, you know, we always dreamed at school that we'd play together right at the top, but Max went off after school. He was told his back would never hold up at international rugby. He had all these niggles, and you know, that dream completely died. And then his story was unbelievable. You know, he saw me doing well up in Scotland, having been a golf professional for like 3 years, and then decided, right, I really want that as well. And Sean Lanine, who was so good to me as the head coach for the Glasgow Warriors, got Max up on a Division 1 sort of deal to sort of trial and test him. And before like the 2 years was up, Max was starting in Scotland with me. It was just the most unbelievable turnaround. And so, yeah, to be stood there in that stadium with you know, best friends, mum and dad, watching, was just a moment that I think I'll never forget. So,
and then, so people always talk about drive and stuff like that. Like, was there is there? I know you and Max well, but just for those that don't, like, is there a brotherly rivalry that drove you to you know, both achieving that, or, you know, I guess my overall question is, you know, what drove you or drives you in order to get to that, you know, that sort of level, whether it be touring with Westlife or starting, you know, at the Stade de France with your brothers stood next to you?
I think in the rugby respect, it's just hard work. I mean, I say this to everyone, you know, talent can only get you so far, and you just got to knuckle down. And if you really want it, then you'll get there. But it doesn't come overnight. And I think for me, I was lucky that I had a brother like Max who had a similar mindset to me, and we'd always push each other. You know, I was lucky that we'd always be, you know, in the off season, we'd always be pushing each other, like training. And I'm not going to lie, we were so competitive. There was a time up until we were 17 that we couldn't play any physical sports against each other without getting in a fight. But looking back, that's what really drove me to wanting to be the best, in my opinion. Because had I not had that, I wouldn't have had that, like, you know, competitive spirit to sort of beat my brother, to get there, to sort of like earn his respect.
And then when you stood there with, let's talk about the brother moment when you're at the Stade de France and you're like, there's my bro, we're both playing for Scotland, 80,000 people singing Flower of Scotland. Now, was that like the achievement of the goal, job done, or were you sort of like, or are you one of those people that's like, and what's next, and what's next? Could you appreciate it? Do you appreciate the moments? Or
I did. I always loved the anthems. I mean, I always just really kind of like embraced it. I know a lot of people don't choose to sing and just are in it and don't really pay attention, but I always used it personally as a moment to really appreciate the people who got you there, appreciate all the coaches, appreciate all the family members, who'd helped you, get to that position. And but for me, it was that first experience of it was like, right, this feels incredible, and I want more. And it was like it was a real sort of tale of like kind of both things. Like, right, this is amazing, but I want to do this for as long as possible.
And then, mate, you got the fix, if you like. You the goal. You were there, and then
exactly
you started to flourish in terms of an international career. And then, unfortunately, 2010 versus Wales, 24 years of age, sort of fairly innocuous moment in terms of like as a part and parcel of the game. A tackle, if you like, that sort of changed your whole world. I mean, for those people that don't know, just explain what happened that day, and then equally how what the hell happened with Thom Evans's mind at that point.
It's a real strange one, Ollie, because the more I look back at that particular game, the more there's so many different things that happened. What I mean by that is we for starters, in my opinion, had our best Scotland 22 that I think had ever taken the field since I'd been involved in the squad, going out to play Wales that day. And I was just ecstatic to get on that pitch, because I was like, right, we're finally going to show the whole rugby world, what Scotland rugby is about. Because, we're from such a small pool of players that 1 or 2 injuries and it just affects the whole squad. And that particular squad we had was the best possible squad I've been involved in. Chris Patterson was getting his 100th cap. There were some really sort of monumental things going on. And I remember getting to the change room and thinking something massive is going to happen here, something huge. And it did. Like, we started off the game, we were like totally dominant over that Welsh side. Dan Parks was like on fire with the boot, and I think we went like 15-0 up after the first like 50 minutes, which was unheard of a Scotland team at that sort of time to be away from home, especially at a place like the Millennium Stadium. And they didn't really have an answer to anything. And I remember being obviously involved in that match, thinking we've won this. Like, I just felt it. Sometimes as a player, you just feel it. Yeah. You're like, and then it just all started to go wrong. Obviously, Chris Patterson got a horrendous injury. I think he burst his kidney, which was just awful, and tried to carry on and play, and he went off. Roy Lamont, who was an incredible player, ruptured his knee. He went off. And then, sadly, I took a collision sort of against like Lee Byrne. I was involved, I think it was Lee Byrne and Shane Williams. And basically what happened was I'd bust my lip open within the first 10 minutes of the game. Just accidental elbow, just trying to wrestle the ball. And I think it was Graham Morrison's elbow at the time, just slipped off and cracked me straight in the mouth. And I remember I was rushed off, and the guy was doing like a quick job to get me back on, but my lip was just like horrendous. And I remember he did like quite, he was just trying to do his best, but the doctor did quite a bad job with my lip.
Horse job, yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking...
I mean, it's really hurt you now. I mean, it really does show now. It's terrible for you.
But I remember coming back on, and I was like, wow, if I get just a little smack on this, it's going to just split right open. But, as you do, you put it to the back of your mind. And I just got an inside ball, took a collision. Then I had a collision with Shane Williams and Lee Byrne, who was kind of coming across. And just as Lee was coming across, I suddenly just remembered my lip, and so to sort of protect that, I in an unorthodox way, sort of turned my head, and that's where it already came about. He kind of jumped up into the tackle, and I just got my neck crushed, and I remember spilling the ball and just thinking, in my mind, like, oh, I've lost control of the ball. I'll try and get it, but just hit the deck and just had no sensation whatsoever. It was just like a bolt of electricity just leaving my body. And just remember lying there, and it was only when I could just hear Dr. Robson, who was instrumental in the whole thing that day. his voice just being like, stay still, stay still. And I just remember I felt okay. I couldn't move and I couldn't breathe. I was like, when someone like bear hugs you from behind and you're just like trying to get out, short breaths at a time. But he just stayed with me, and basically what happened.
What was that feeling like, Tommy? What was that feeling like that moment when you were like, I can't breathe, I can't move? Was that like?
Oh, it was terrifying.
Frightening, terrifying. Yeah,
terrifying. Yeah, is the word. Just because, in a sellout Six Nations game, you basically, you're not aware of the noise at all when you're playing until someone makes a break or scores the try. But I just remember there being deadly silence in the stadium, and that for me was like I don't know, just made me realize the kind of significance of what was going on. And I could hear my breath, and I was like, oh, something's just not right here. And we spent a good 20 minutes again, which was a hell of a long time, to stop a game of that magnitude. And I just remember like pretty much being in pain until my operation. But I was so fortunate because everyone who was involved that day, the medical staff, the people at Cardiff Heath Hospital where I went, I was operated 3 hours after I had that injury. And had it been a pub game or some other sort of situation, and I hadn't had that attention, and the NHS were just incredible, I would never have been as lucky as I was, because I had a double fracture dislocation from C5 to C7 region of the spine, and it was just like, it was really touch and go. But I have to give credit to everyone who helped me that day. It was amazing.
And Tommy, when you sort of, I don't know what the experience was for you, but like, woke up or came back round, was your mindset still of like, I've had an injury, like, what is it? I guess a bit like, well, from my experience in professional rugby players are like, what's my injury? What's the rehab? How long till I come back? Was that your sort of mindset? And then I guess the hammer blow of being told, nah, mate, like, this isn't happening again.
I think if I'm totally honest, feeling everything I did before I was operated on it, and seeing what was going on, right up until they operated on me. As soon as I came about, I just knew in my gut. I just knew I was just firstly grateful that I wasn't going to be in a wheelchair, because that was my first question. Because then I had another operation the day after, which was just to fit the screws in and everything, because the surgeon was like, look, like, I know you're an active guy, and I know you want to get back to normality in terms of, working out and whatever. So I want to do another operation on you to fit all these screws in, because, your cage will be quite delicate otherwise. So I want to put like kind of bolt it in just for safe measure. And I'm so glad he did, because, I can do everything I did before. I just can't do crazy weights or, go out on the surfboard and do all the sort of stupid things I was doing before. But it was tough, because I without being told, I knew straight away that I was probably never going to play again. And I think that above anything was a really hard pill to swallow.
I mean, I personally am very grateful for him putting those bolts in, because if you could surf as well, then you'd literally be totally irresistible. Then it would, life just wouldn't therefore be fair. But at least I now know you can't surf, which is one thing. But coming back to like the actual reality of the scenario that you were sort of faced there as a 24-year-old lad, you were 10 caps into your Scotland career. Yeah, undoubtedly would have gone on to 50 plus. Whatever else, with the amount of time you had left in the game, etc., etc. I mean, you had I don't know if you did, but you had a trajectory or a plan that you were working towards from your professional career, and that suddenly was ripped up. Like, if I put that analogy into different scenario, but people have lots of plans or strategies. Even now, like COVID environment, like the business is going a certain way, and bang, it's got to change for a reason that's totally out of their control. Like, what was the process that you went through mentally, psychologically to get over that? Or was it just gratitude? I mean, I imagine that only went so far.
I think initially it was just gratitude, and it was only a few years later that kind of the sort of real feeling of the fact that I was never going to play again really set in. But for the first like 7 or 8 months, it was really just gratitude. And even up until the point when I was told that I was categorically never going to play again, or if I did, it was going to be just at a risk that would not be worth it in the slightest. Yes, I broke down and I cried, but at the same time, it was still in that phase of like, well, you know, I was in a ward, in the trauma ward, where I saw horrific things. I saw this sweet sort of 18-year-old girl who'd been riding her bicycle one day in the local village, where we were, and she'd been hit by a car, hit and run, and she was paralyzed from the waist down. And seeing her every morning next to me, waking up, and then suddenly the realization that she was never going to walk again was the most, like, for me, just the most, I don't know, like
sobering thought.
Sobering thought, because she was a stunning young girl who had her whole life ahead of her, and she was never going to walk again. And it's just, I remember thinking, here I am feeling sorry for myself, but I'm going to walk again. And, you know, that was like the light at the end of the tunnel. But, you know, in regards to your question, I guess for me, it was just I was so lucky that I made such a good recovery, and I was so fortunate. And it was when I made that recovery that I was like, well, this is tough, because I feel like I could play again now. Yeah. But I just simply couldn't. So that's when I started to struggle, if I'm honest, day to day. Because
did you try? Did you try and have another go? And
yeah, I did. I did. But like, I think it was five years later, I played in the Dubai Sevens.
I remember actually. I remember. Yeah.
Against everyone's wishes.
Right.
But I just was like, I had to do it, and it was. I'll never do it again. But I'm glad I got it out of my system. But
why did you say that? Why never do it? What was that feeling like? An emotion that you went through? Because that by the sounds of it was like curtain down. I know in my gut now, this is it.
So I guess like a part of me, with everyone, always kind of holds out for the what if. And, you know, as we both know, that rugby community is the most special thing, and I'm so fortunate to have been involved with that circle of life, because, you know, I didn't just miss the rugby, but I missed the banter, the whole camaraderie, just everything. As you know, I mean, it's just, there's nothing that really you know, equates to it, in my opinion. And so playing in that Dubai Sevens was awesome. You know, meeting up with the lads at the airport, having a beer before getting on the flight, getting out there, meeting everyone, hearing all, you know, where everyone's from, what they're going to bring to the team, being in a lovely place like Dubai with the weather. And it was all amazing. But before every game, I think for me, the realization, like, what am I doing? Like, this is stupid. Like, knowing what I went through in the recovery, and just thinking, why am I putting myself at risk? So it was like that feeling of nerves, but it was that feeling of nerves, but at the same time thinking, what am I doing? And we ended up winning the tournament, but I'll never forget, in the semi-final that we played this Fijian team, and was running down the wing, and because I was trying, I mean, not that I ever got involved in contact much anyway, but I was trying to like stay out of the rucks and like make my tackles. And in sevens you can kind of get away with that. Well, not really. Like I was blown away firstly by how much the game had moved forward. Like 5 years, you know, I just couldn't believe you know, especially in the sevens game. And this was like a tear down from, you know, the what was the UR sevens, tear down from.
You'd have been in the invitational.
I couldn't believe how like physical it was, you know, in every aspect of the game. But I remember in the semi-final running down the wing, and this Fijian guy nearly taking my head off, and that's when I went cold, and I was like, like I'm out.
Yeah. I mean, how did you? I mean, it's interesting, right? Because lots of people probably wouldn't have even contemplated doing something like that or going to reapproach something like that. Like, how did you? Which this is a question around fear. Like, how did you manage that fear process or did you never really? Was it always there, but you needed to?
Yeah. I didn't really. Usually with any injury or anything, I've always been pretty good at once I'm in it, I just block it all out. But I guess because it was that particular injury, like, which I'd, never experienced before, would never wish to experience again. It was just, and I knew that, I went down to see the surgeon who operated on me to ask his opinion on what he thought of me playing again. And he was just like, don't even think about it. So I had all these voices in the back of my mind that I never really shaked off that tournament. And so yeah, like it was different because I wasn't 100% confident for the first time.
And was that when you finally, obviously that day you finally knew, like, my rugby career is done? The dream as a kid was over. Like, how did that sort of sit with you?
I mean,
how did you manage that?
Yeah, it was tough, but like I said, I was so fortunate to be with such a great bunch of lads, and we won the tournament. So it was like I took that as like my final farewell. Just like going out with the guys after winning a tournament. It was the perfect send off. Like, yeah, it was absolutely like gutting still, but I'd already dealt with that years before, so it was like a real proper send off, and I couldn't have asked for it in a better way, really. And
I mean, you don't strike me as a bloke that has regrets, but I mean, any regrets in your career, or so I guess any regrets, and what do you miss about the game the most? Now.
I guess I don't regret it because I'm so grateful to the opportunity Glasgow gave me and my brother. But I had the opportunity to go to Stade Francais like you did. And I guess it's not a regret, but I would have loved to have played rugby out in France. I think their style of rugby would have really suited me, and I would have really enjoyed myself. And if I had it all again, it just would have been nice to just have experienced that, is all.
Well, I mean, Max Corsini, our owner, was an avid fan. No, I think you appeared more times in the Dieux de Stade, the Gods of Stade calendar, than any other individual in the history of the calendar. So there you go.
I still speak to Max occasionally. I mean, you know him well. He's such a nice guy, isn't he? Though,
yeah, he's a legend at work. Yeah.
Like, absolutely. And I had a few meetings with him. When I was really thinking of moving there, and he was nothing but a champion. I had a lot of time for Max.
So you at 24, 25, you got the rug pulled out from underneath you in terms of like your rugby career. Now, how did you refocus your mind and reapply yourself onto something else? Where I don't know, whatever it was, 2 years prior or 3 years prior, you've been stood with your brother at the Stade de France, realizing this dream, and now he was going to carry on and in his international career, but you were sort of stopped and had to reinvigorate yourself. Like, what was that sort of process in your mind, like psychologically, mentally? How did you what was the process you went through, and how did you end up where you ended up now?
Yeah, it was really difficult because I've always loved my sports above anything else. I mean, academically I was sound, but I never saw myself as like working in the city, like or being able to do that. I just my concentration isn't that good, and so sports was something I always saw myself in. I never really saw myself coaching because I didn't love the game that much. Yes, I love playing it, but I wasn't like going to sit down and break down, how we were going to the logistics of how we were going to win a game, as some lads do. Some lads like yourself have a great rugby brain and can do that. I was just like, give me the ball, let me run, and let me try and score tries. That's what I love.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like finding, like what to do. And with the acting, it was something that it wasn't a go-to idea. I was kind of, busy kind of getting myself back together and recovery. And I went down to see Margot Wells, who was instrumental in just giving me like my mojo back, really, because, you know, I trained with her, and it was, you know, training something I've always done my whole life. So it was nice to just have that routine again. And it was really when I enrolled in this acting class in Leicester Square, purely just out of like utter fascination to see what it was all about, that I suddenly got there. And it was just like a revelation. It was there I was, and I had this ability to sort of take out like all the stresses that I was kind of going through, and put it into a craft, and that craft being acting, you know, to play someone else, to sort of kind of address all these emotions that were going on inside me, and use it in a positive way. And that's the beauty of acting is, you know, I genuinely enjoy it. It's not that, yeah, I would love to be, you know, make it and be in the movies and whatnot. Of course, great, but it has an underlying kind of feel good factor for me. And you know, whether it's like, you know, doing commercials or whatever, it was a way of really kind of getting out all these emotions in a really positive way. Yeah, expressing yourself. And I never did acting at school. I was never in sort of any plays, but for me it was just, I absolutely loved it from that first time I did it in class, and to now, you know, it's just going in for an audition, like a big audition, and kind of really just letting yourself go and being that different person, and like drawing on all these emotions and coming out, regardless of whether you got the role or not. You know, that drive back in the car, it's just like, wow, that was cool. That was pretty cool.
On that, having not necessarily had an acting background and like that, from your perspective, lots of people can probably relate to, I don't know whether you do feel it, right, but the nerves that you get of presenting, like, so if you're going in for an audition, it's just the kind of same thing as somebody presenting a, you know, big pitch or whatever else like that. Yeah. Do you get nerves? Do they even enter into the Thom Evans psyche? And if you do, how do you manage them? You know, what's the process for that?
You do get nerves, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't get nervous. But I get way more nervous being me and going into a room and talking as me, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel like when I'm pretending to be someone else, or I am someone else, I go in and the nerves are kicking in, but I can go into a room full of like 10 people and just not faze me at all. Whereas if I went in and stood up and, you know, did some form of public speaking as myself, I mean, I've gotten better at it now, but there was a time when I just hated it. You know, even doing like the odd, you know, at the rugby, like, you know, the sort of after match functions. Just hated it. Yeah, awkward.com.
But one of the auditions that you enrolled for or nearly got, you told me at the beginning of this show, was 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, phenomenal. I mean, was that just you walked in and took your top off, or was there? I mean, because if not, surely you must have been nervous about playing that role. Didn't you go for the lead? You were going for the lead role.
I did, and you know, I wasn't like super close, but I definitely had a couple of callbacks, and in the acting world, that's pretty good. And it was one of the first things I ever went for, and it was a huge project, you know, like a massive movie coming off the book of the success from the books. And you know, it was right up my street. It was a guy who just like, well, you know, I think it was exciting because the guy's from a really broken background. It was going to be a lot of nakedness and and you had to be prepared and willing to do that. And I was just like, I remember reading the breakdown thinking, tick tick tick. Seducing girls, tick. And it was just one of those things, you know, that was just like, I was like, this guy seems awesome, but probably an arsehole at the same time. So it was like, and I didn't think too much of it because I was like, I'm never going to get this. So there was no pressure on my behalf. And, Yeah,
Did you not feel any of that pressure once you sort of started getting callbacks, and I guess a bit of momentum came? You're like, oh bloody hell, like maybe I might be in the running for this. You know, you start to build pictures up in your brain. Like, how did you manage that sort of pressure? Because suddenly realizing this is quite a big role, and then equally, how did you manage the disappointment of like, oh fuck, I haven't got it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, because I was new to it all. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like, you talk yourself up in your mind that you're generally going to get it when you're clearly not. But at the time, it's like, yeah, I'm going to get it. I got this call back. And it was amazing. It was such a buzz, you know, buzz that I'd missed for a long time, you know, like running out on the on the pitch before a game, and just that feeling you get, irreplaceable feeling. And so it was definitely. And you know, I didn't get the part, and I was like, you know, this acting thing's easy. I'm gonna this is a walk in the park. And never gotten closer since. But you know, that's the thing. It's like you're waiting for that one role that just suits you, and it has to be the right timing, the right place. And any actor who's made it will tell you that you just got to be patient. Patience is one of the biggest virtues you need, and just keep holding your craft, because I would prefer to be overly prepared and get my chance than had say I got that part and would have been terrible and done it injustice. It would never have got an opportunity again.
So mate, let's just switch to pivot, because obviously, you know, whilst you didn't quite manage to make the role of seducing, you know, the masses through Hollywood, you did manage to seduce the masses through, you know, the fancy footwork that you displayed on, you know, arguably the only show that I would love to be on. Like, if I could be on Strictly Come Dancing, that is the one thing in my life I would love.
I think we should start something, because I think you would be unbelievable. I think you would be much better than I was on it.
No, I think I'd be like that. Like, there's always that one embarrassing one that they're like, how have they got on there? They get like a sympathy vote straight out. That's what I'd be.
I disagree, because I've seen your little twinkle toes, and I think like especially the jive, you just be like, just kicking
Shakira
them out.
says, mate, these hips don't lie. But you know,
forget Shakira, you'd be Fred Astaire, just like just like nimble.
I look as old as Fred Astaire, you know, nowadays. He's obviously now not with us. So, mate, but like, talk to me about that experience, because that is, you know, people love Strictly Come Dancing, and you got onto the show, and then millions of people staring at you, becoming a dancer. And I'm, you know, we've already heard that. Yeah, okay, it was a little bit of a passion point of yours. Yeah, but standing there on the dance floor, being judged with millions of people watching, like, what was that pressure like? How did you manage that? And, you know, not forget your moves and God knows what else and all the rest of it.
I'll tell you now, it's the hardest thing I'd ever done up until that point.
What, psychologically or physically, you mean, or both?
Both. And I'll tell you why. Psychologically, because it's completely new to you. I'm a pretty confident dancer if I go to like a bar or club, because you're freestyling. You're just going with what, you know, your kind of mind and body's telling you. But when I was told to do particular steps and at particular times and in coordination and in formation, and you had a window of 4 days to learn not only a dance you've never heard of, but a routine that you'll never ever remember again, it was just like, and being as like competitive as I am, I like, and my attention span being as bad as it is, as I said earlier, it's like it was just this pressure to learn the moves and knowing that you're going to be on TV, and I struggled, because, you know, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and if I'm not getting something, I just get frustration sets in. It always has, and I can't get myself out of that headspace. You know, some people like can just kind of deal with it and just be like, "Right, breathe, let's get through it." I'm the opposite. You know, when it gets on top.
Well, how do you get out of that? I'm interested. We'll talk about, like, I imagine lots of people can relate to that. Like, I don't understand something and just get frustrated. Like, what, do you have a method, or like, how do you get out of it?
Well, I just jump around, and I'd have like a boxing pad just like right there like at every session I did, just to get out of it and take out some stress, because people who can just deal with 1,000 things going on and pressure, I give so much credit to, can be calm, in like the face when everything else is going on. Anyway, so I just really struggled on that behalf, and like you said, it was just the nerves, like performing on national television, doing something out of the ordinary, was terrifying, but also the most exhilarating thing I think I've ever done, because when it goes right, and it was the very few times with me that it did go right, it was just the most amazing feeling. It was just like an out of body, because you're nervous for a rugby game, at least I was, every time, especially the bigger games, but you're sure of your skill set. Whereas like when you're out there, right up until the point where the band starts, you're like, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? Like, what I kept thinking to myself, what's the first step? And I was like, oh, I've forgotten it. Panic sets in, because you're just not sure of your situation,
I mean, apart from the fact that obviously it was a live show and you had to make a move, like, how did you overcome that? Because I bet loads and loads of people will be sitting there going, I feel the same way. I mean, not about doing Strictly, but at work or at life, like, I don't know, being a parent, whatever it might be, of like, my God, this is so outside of my comfort zone. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know what my first step is. And lots of people then just sort of crumble under that pressure. So what in your mind, or what do you do, if you like, that makes you go, I'm in, like, we'll take that first step?
Yeah, I think it goes back to like what I said earlier, just no regrets. And I, as terrified as I was, I've always loved doing stuff that takes me out of my comfort zone. I think that's when you truly live in this life, is when you're just like, you don't do the same things. You try something new, because, I hate it when people are just like, oh no, like that, like I wouldn't like that. And it's like, well, have you tried that? And they're like, no. And it's like, well, then how can you say you wouldn't like it? It might turn out to be the best thing you've ever done. Or yeah, you might not like it, but you can't categorically say you're not going to enjoy something you've never tried. So I guess with Strictly, I was just like, God, this is like horrendous how I'm feeling, and the stress and all that. But when I had those glimpses where it went right, and I did do the right moves, and it was in coordination, it was in time, it was just the biggest buzz. And I was like, yeah, this is what it's about, and this is the reason why I'm doing this show.
And did you say the same when you're obviously putting on that tight spandex? I mean, that was obviously one of the main reasons that you I mean, I've never seen a man look so good apart from
No, but I say this to everyone, because like my mum's friends were always like, they were my most vivid fans, but they were like, what are the sequins like? What they like to wear, and like, did you enjoy that side? And I'll be honest, when I first saw...
You're just telling me you've had them in your wardrobe all your life anyway, so...
Pretty much. But when I said the story, when I first saw the first outfit I was wearing, I think it was for the waltz, and I had all these, like, this glitter, like, embroidery. I literally had a bit of an argument with the stylist, kind of just being like, I can't wear that. I'm just going to get ripped too much. Like, please just get rid of the sparkles. But then come the end of the show, I was the one being like, no, there's not enough sparkles on that. Like, we could make that. We could more va-va-voom. Yeah.
Cut that deeper. Cut that deeper.
Yeah, a bit more flesh. Yeah. Now we're talking. All right. But that's what it does to you. It brought out a side of me that I never thought. I knew was there, but it just kind of gave it life. And I had even though I would have loved to have stayed in the competition longer and felt like I had much more to give, Strictly was one of the best things I've ever done. And honestly, like you say there, you'd love to do it. You would have the best time of your life.
I know. I'm desperate to. Well, I mean, I'm not famous enough. For B, I'm not good looking enough. But C, my wife refuses. My wife point blank refuses. She will say, "You're never ever allowed on that show if you ever get asked to do it." So I'm like, oh god. I think that's why she dresses me every day, just to make sure that I don't get on. But mate, you've mentioned a couple of things that I love, right? And so you sort of your philosophy of like no regrets, throw yourself into everything, yeah, and Strictly was one of those sort of scenarios. More recently, there has been an epic appearance as on the X Factor with our good friend Phillips and the like as TriStar, the iconic TriStar. How did that opportunity come about? Like, where did X Factor, for starters, before we even talk around like the psychology of it all, like where did the X Factor piece come from?
Well, the mad thing is like I used to love the X Factor. I hadn't watched it for like the last couple of years, so I feel like it kind of lost its sort of way a bit. But I used to love it, and I guess the crazy thing about that whole sort of experience was, I know Ben Foden quite well. We kind of grew up together, same age, same era, and we played for England together at schoolboy level. And I never forget when I first met Ben, and it was at 16s. I think it was like Southwest against the North, and like I overheard him listening to this like Backstreet Boys song, and straight away I was just like, "Are you listening to Backstreet Boys?" And Ben was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "We're now going to be friends," and we were friends pretty much from that moment. And is
that the way? Is that the way you become friends with Thom Evans? Just Backstreet Boys.
And the amount of times, like whether it be in the changing rooms or like after match functions, when we would just be like, imagine what it would be like to be in like a boy band, like a genuine boy band, like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, and just be belting out those classics and just have like thousands of girls basically in awe of you. I mean, we were just like that's the dream. Like, and we're like, well, is it the dream? Because we're not doing that. We're playing rugby. But I guess for both of us, it was always like, the reason why I did the band in the first place was because it's just like that buzz of being on stage, and it's like something that's there. It's been there for me from an early age. And so with that being said, I get this call one day from Ben, and he's like, "Are you by yourself right now?" And I was like, "Okay, Ben, this is a bit weird. I haven't spoken to you in a while, and you're asking me if I'm by myself," which I am. And he was like, "Because you're going to be wanting to sit down when you hear this." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, I'm sat down. I was thinking he was going to tell me some awful story. And he was like, "I've been asked to be on X Factor this year. They're doing like a celeb special, but I've suggested that I don't do it solo, but like I do it in a band. And I've suggested you as like potentially one of my other bandmates, but I just wanted to run it by you to see if you want to do it." So I think he'd been approached to do it as a solo artist. And then he was like, "Right, I need to do it in a band and whatnot. That's the dream." And so he reached out to me, and I was just like 100%, like before the third word came out of his mouth, I was like, "I'm in, I'm doing it." And I was like, "Who else is doing it?" And I think he was trying to get Danny Care involved, but obviously Danny, playing first team at Quins, was never going to get the time off. And I think Mike Phillips was also in the mix. Now, I didn't even know Mike could sing. Obviously, great looking dude, but I was like, I don't even know if he can sing.
Yeah.
And then I think Max was the other member, but my brother Max, but he cannot sing, like tone deaf. Like got some decent moves, but just absolutely like tone deaf.
Yeah.
And then so anyway, the conversations kind of happened over the next couple of weeks, and it was decided. And yeah, so before we knew it, we were like together, like in a studio, and then they basically.
How did you all come together? How did the three of you come together? You and Ben knew each other. You didn't all know each other at the beginning, did you?
No. Me and Ben knew each other, but we didn't know Levi Davis. He was a young lad in the academy at Bath, but he was found out because apparently he'd done a few like gigs and stuff, and you know, his voice, which it is unbelievable. And they were like, look, we think it'd be good to have the three of you together. And when we heard Levi sing, we were just like, okay, done, no more questions. Like, and when we sang "Lean on Me" the first time for this sort of behind the doors audition, and that's when I think we first realized we might have a shot, because you know, the three of us together actually sounded all right. And that was it. And then so we were flying off to LA, and that's when we did the first audition out in Malibu at Simon Cowell's place.
I saw that in the back garden. I mean, I literally became an avid fan of X Factor from that moment on. That I knew that you and Phones were on there. But how I mean, you've already said you sort of don't necessarily manage or get nervous or get fearful. I don't know what the word is. But how sort of nerve-wracking or scary was that thing, or were you just exhilarated by the whole thing? Because some people, that is, I mean, petrifying. Standing up and speaking for one, but then singing in front of A, and then B, sing in front of Simon Cowell, and C, sing in front of Simon Cowell, his friends in his back garden. Even worse. I mean, literally, it doesn't get any worse for most people. So how did you get through that and manage that?
Well, United Strictly was the most terrifying. This was a step above that. This was like, I guess it was all right when we were doing all the auditions and stuff, and you know, like the practicing behind closed doors. But when we got out to LA and heard the other contestants and heard the standard of the voices, and then realized that, and then we were told that we were going to go out and not only perform to the three judges, but for there to be like 100 people, like the most sought after people in the music industry, there to sort of like judge us. We were just like, I was like, even me and Ben, who are pretty confident, we were just like, I don't know whether we can do this. This is like, this could be terrible. And that sort of feeling went right up into the performance. We remember being in like Simon Cowell's bedroom, because that's where all the acts had to wait before going on stage. And so we're sat in Simon Cowell's bedroom, and like Ben suddenly like, I've forgotten the first words to the song. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? We're just about to go on stage. And he's like, no, I've just had like a mind block, and maybe you guys should go on without me. And I was just like, are you joking me now? And we'd also picked the song No Diggity, and suddenly we're like, you know, we're going up on stage to all these, you know, people in the music industry singing No Diggity, just like three rugby guys. And it was just all these things going on in your mind. And we basically came up with this little dance routine in the toilet, like just the three of us, because we were like, right, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this with a bang, and we're just going to like throw in some moves. So we came up with these little moves in the bathroom, and we just went out there. And I never forget, just before we went out, like Ben just turned to me and Levi, and he was just like, no matter what happens, he was like, I love you guys, and let's just have the most fun that we can regardless. And I think it was literally those words that were like, it from then on, it was kind of just a blur. And we were just like, all that weight of expectation, all the nerves just disappeared. And we went out on that stage, and we were just, it felt like we were in the changing rooms, like, you know, back in the rugby days, we were just with the lads. I think we all just felt so comfortable, and we sang No Diggity, and it couldn't have gone like any better. And before we knew it, we were like holding Dermot O'Leary and jumping up and down, and it was just one of the standout moments, and will be the standout moments of my life. It was like just a moment I will never forget.
Well, I mean, one of the stand-up moments for me was obviously you just giving it back to Louis Walsh, you know, twin barrels, one of my favourite moments all time on television. But you know that experience is obviously an incredible one, you know, for you from start to finish. You know, anything that you learned from that, or you reflect on it and think, you know, that's helped you now within your whatever acting, singing career, like you look back on, or? Yeah,
I think so many things. I mean, it's definitely my confidence, because you know, I think confidence in any shape or form, like having put yourself through a show like that where you're doing two things out of your comfort zone, singing and dancing, and it being like, you know, live television. You know, it really is. It was, I used to wake up just in floods of sweats the night before a performance, because you're performing in front of like Simon Cowell as well, who, you know, has been the sort of pinpoint of certainly my television experience from day one. You know, like I loved Pop Idol, I loved X Factor, I loved Britain's Got Talent. Suddenly you're just like there and he's staring straight back at you and you're like, what is going on? Like, am I actually here right now? But it just teaches you to like nothing's impossible. Like we would stress that we were never going to get something done. We weren't going to know the routines. The song was too hard for us. And then we would get round to the weekend and we would accomplish it. And it was just like, with hard work, you can really accomplish anything. And that's what Strictly taught me. And that's what X Factor taught me even more so, is just, if you really want something, hard work can get you there.
And just setting those little goals along the way. And
exactly. Yeah. Just not getting in your head, not letting that seed of doubt, which I do all the time, by the way, let creep in, just to like try your best to block them out, knuckle down, and just get it done. And the X Factor for a few reasons was my most the funnest experience I've had to date, just in so many different ways. But obviously met my now girlfriend Nicole, who is just awesome. And that was just, you know, was not expecting to, you know, kind of
let's talk about that, because you said around like building confidence and setting little goals. Like, how did that come about? How did you pluck up the confidence and the gumption to go and ask out one of the most beautiful women in the world, and then also one of your judges on X Factor? Was that actually just a tactic of you, like, we need a way here to make sure we reach the final, so I'm going to go ask out, I can't ask out Louis, I can't ask out Simon, so I better go ask out Nicole? Like, how did that all come about, man? Like, I mean, that is, you know, an awesome love story that comes out of X Factor. But, you know, it would be remiss of me, because I know a million people will be asking, probably most people are asking Nicole, how the hell did you get with Thom Evans? I'm asking, more importantly, Thom Evans, how the hell did you get with Nicole?
Well, firstly, I think no one's asking that to Nicole, because I'm the one massively punching. But yeah, it was you know, it wasn't even in my thought process to really even try it on with Nicole, because, you know, one, I think it would have been sort of a bit unprofessional, and two, you know, she's so lovely and stunning in every possible way that I was just like she's kind of out of my league. And then it was only when we did the Swing Low Sweet Chariot song, which was meant to go with England winning the World Cup, which sadly, you know, that they didn't. And we then found ourselves still having to go out there and sing a song that would have been amazing had they won, but it was a bit like kind of awkward now. And she kindly saved us that particular night, even though we weren't her act to save. But she kind of, I think, felt kind of sorry for us and did it for the public, and she saved us. And it was only after that performance that we, as a band, went up to her dressing room to sort of thank her for doing that, you know, as a kind gesture. And that was the first time that I met her, and it was, and I've never looked back since. It was just, people always say, you know, when you know, and I've never really, I can honestly say I've never really had that moment, but within the first couple of days, it just felt awesome, and it's been awesome ever since. And she's so easy. She's like, just fun to be around, and, you know, I've hit the jackpot, really.
Yeah. I mean, it was, you know, it's obviously an amazing story, but it's also, there's like a genuine authentic question behind it, around, like, lots of people, you know, your partner is a beautiful woman, and lots of people are intimidated by beautiful people, whether it's male or female. So they don't actually pluck up the courage and confidence to to ask the question. So I was just wondering if it was sort of blind ignorance, or if what that process was in your brain around, oh my God, that's Nicole Scherzinger, she's amazing, I'm gonna ask her out. Like, I'm not saying lots of people are going to be asking the equivalents, but lots of people go through that same process and bottle it. So I'm wondering why you didn't bottle it, or if you did something different.
No, and I completely agree with you what you just said there. If you don't ask, you don't get. I remember my grandma always used to say that, and it's something that has definitely helped me in my lifetime so many times with not just situations regarding like asking girls out, but like just simple things. If you don't ask, then you'll never know whether you're going to get anything in return. And I've gotten so many things when I plucked up the courage just to go and simply ask the question, whether it be in rugby, like ask the head coach, why I'm not selected this week, which none of us really like to do. And then he tells you, and then, being on his wavelength, next week you do what he's told you, and suddenly you find yourself in the mix again. But with Nicole, I generally didn't ask the question because it was just like, it was never just even really in my mind. She was the judge on the show. Yeah. And I was kind of respectful of that, and I just thought sliding into her DMs just wouldn't have been, the cool thing or the done thing. And in my mind, I thought, had I done that, clearly have got rejected, and then it would have just been awkward. I would have been that guy who slid into her DMs. It was a bit weird. So, I'm really grateful that it just happened naturally, because, again, had it been at like a party or like, after the show, it just would have been, with people around. It was just a very intimate first meeting, and it was just really nice to kind of like meet her that way. And
then on a more broader question then, I mean, around that, this is probably not something you've had to deal with a lot, and I'm probably more acquainted to, but how do you deal with rejection? If on that point, I mean, you don't ask, you don't get, but I guess the more times you put your head above the parapet, the more risks you face of maybe getting rejected. I don't know, have you got any moments in your life where you sort of think, oh God, I really wanted that and I've been blown out, and how you manage that? Is there anything you can sort of think of around that?
I would prefer to be rejected than have that what if I'd asked, going on in my mind. And I'll tell you, when I was getting myself back together, and I was like in the recovery process, and I was training with Margot, I guess I saw so many rugby players coming in with these doubts, with this like, like I'm not playing this week because the coach like doesn't talk to me and stuff. And it's an interesting point you just said that, because I was just like, just ask him the question. Like, life's too short. Like, as in, because when I played rugby, it was the same thing. I was nervous to ask. I was nervous to like inquire why I wasn't playing. And like, unless you ask the question, you might never know. And I would prefer to ask and be told straight out, because you're not doing this and this guy's performing better than you, than to keep my mouth shut and then live in the knowledge of what if. Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, it's like, I think so many people do that, especially in the rugby world, these academy lads who like, are talented, really talented like players, and, the coach can't get around to speaking to everyone. So you've got to take it upon yourself. And if I could go back, I would have done that way more. Like, and not just in rugby, but in everyday life. Like, you can't just sit around and think that someone else is going to make things happen for you. You've got to take ownership and be like, if you want it, it's about going out and just making it happen, I guess.
And how important, just on that, I mean, there's a few people you mentioned like throughout the conversation, like your parents, your brother, Margot, Nicole, like your best mates who did the band with. How important for you are, I guess, whatever you want to call them, trusted advisors or mentors in that sort of decision process, in the decision-making process of like, do I go for this, do I not go for that? Like, have you had like a core group of I don't even want to call them advisors, mentors, role models, or whatever, that you sounding boards that you go to all the time? Like, do they play a big role in your life, or are you very much like, nah, block everything out, it's about me, away we go?
No, I think in some ways I am. In some ways I'm quite stubborn and set in stone, and like, if I want to do something and I'm going to do it, that's just me being honest. But it's really nice to have like my family, and Nicole, like I speak to a lot about sort of certain things that I'm doing or jobs that I'm getting involved in, because she's got such a wealth of experience, and she's kind of like fought her whole life to get where she's got, and it's really nice sort of hearing someone else's input on things. I think really helps, because if they're knowledgeable and they have helpful and sound advice, it's only a good thing to hear it from someone else's perspective. And I've certainly felt that that's helped me massively, and reassured me in decisions I've made, and helped me not make like stupid mistakes. So I would 100% agree with that.
I mean, now obviously where you are, your rugby career, then obviously strictly X Factor, now with Nicole, etc., a lot more, I guess, scrutiny being placed on you, your life, your decision making, and whatever else like that. Like, how do you handle the I guess the media attention, but the negatives and the positives that come with equally being an actor, a singer? It's a necessary evil of your job. Like, how do you manage that piece from your perspective, and make sure that it is a positive influence to you rather than negative?
Yeah, it's tough, because I think I realized a couple of years ago that you can't please everyone, and I used to be someone who would be really affected by negative comments and what other people thought of me. That's just the way I was. And but when I kind of realized that I couldn't please everyone, and as long as I'm happy, I think after my injury, I just appreciated life, not that I didn't before, but I think, just having your health and being healthy is just the most important thing. And I'm just so grateful to have that when so many people don't, and I think sometimes as society, we get lost in what we don't have as opposed to what we do have. I know I still get down about not getting that particular job, or not, I wonder what it would be like to have that person's like career or life. And I have to take a step back and be like, I'm so grateful, for what I do have. And I think a lot of people could sort of like.
And do you do stuff around that self-awareness piece then? Because I mean, you're saying like you handle the media by effectively not caring and just being grateful for what you've got and not worrying about too much about what other people say. But it's obviously something that clearly influences the trajectory of your career, the media. So how do you sort of, I guess, keep maintaining that position, if you like, of like just self-awareness, not worrying too much about what other people say, because you can get caught up in the hype of it all, the emotion of it all.
Yeah, and it's really hard. I mean, I wish I had an answer, a clear answer to that question, but I'd be lying if I said if I didn't read a negative comment, someone who's just like gone out of their way to not only comment on something in my life, but just a negative comment. But then I've just realized that these people are probably the most unhappy people, like, as in, if you're not going to, it's all about, I'm more for having like an opinion, but some of the stuff I've had like written about me is just laughable. Like, you can't take it seriously, because, in this day and age, if you were to take it all seriously, then you would end up having like a very unhappy life. And I think I'm fully aware that I've chose this life, and I'm going to be critiqued on, my acting or whatever I do, my relationship, but that doesn't define who I am. And I'm not going to be told by someone I don't know who is, a coward on a keyboard who's writing it. I'm not going to try and even prove them wrong. So it's just one of those things that yeah, I'd hope that, you know, I just want to make people kind of, to entertain people the best way I can, whether that's making them happy or enjoying what I do. That's all I can ask. But I'm certainly not going to lose sleep anymore over someone who, you know, has their own agenda. That's their choice and their opinion, and good luck to them.
Mate, my final question, because you seem like a man who's like sort of content and found his way, like of his purpose in life and whatever else. But like, you know, have you got like a life philosophy? And has that changed from maybe where you were younger to where it is now? But you have a life philosophy moving forward. You said lots of things like around gratitude, but I didn't know if you've really got one in general, like a general purpose statement or life philosophy that you do.
No, I think. I used to say that like live every day like it's your last, but that completely went out the window like a couple of years ago. I think just be grateful. Very, very short and sharp, I know, but just be grateful. I know that when I get down about, as I said, like silly, insignificant things, it's because I overanalyze things, and I've always been that way. But when I take a step back and, like I said, just realize what I've done in my life and the great people I have around me and the roof over my head, I just always come back to that one phrase: is just be grateful. And I think, you know, with everything that's going on in the world, you know, and the horrendous things, it's something to always kind of just have in the back of your mind.
Mate, what an epic way to end. Tommy Evans, thank you ever so much for being part of the Grow Show. I bloody absolutely love it. What a hero.
Thanks for having me. It's honestly, it's a pleasure as always to see you, and it's been awesome. Jesus, it's been like rehab for me. So I
good man, everyone. Tommy Evans.